Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. This program is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, where each week we have a certified member tell us about some concept that they've been thinking about and working on and seeing to be very effective and share it with you so that we can, pick and choose and see what can make life more exciting and more doable and more efficient for you. Our speaker today is Judith Klefman, and she is going to be talking with us about relationships, but it's going to be moving beyond love and belonging. So, welcome everyone, and welcome Judith.
Thank you, Mona. And yes, it's become one of my maybe pet peeves is a bit much, but doing practicum work with people, one of the things that I'm seeing is, going for the love and belonging. Glasser talks about relationships. Most problems have an underlying relationship issue. And so people go immediately to love and belonging, who are your relationships and, how's your marriage and your kids and your work and all of those kinds of things. And not that that isn't important. And a lot of people, that's exactly where the issue is. Perhaps because I certainly have a love and belonging need, but it's not my highest one. I'm not here because of my love and belonging need. I'm here because of, guess what? My power need. I like feeling important. I like sharing information. I like people asking me questions and engaging in discussions and things like that. So that's why I'm like, no, relationships are more than love and belonging. And how do we figure that out? One of the things is, and this goes way back into the 1980s, Glasser talked about the needs being genetic and uneven in that we have the 5 needs: survival, love and belonging, power, fun, and freedom. And they are not equal. It isn't like there's 20%, 20%, 20%, etc. So we each have a needs profile. We have one or two, maybe even 3 of our needs that are stronger. And in that way, that means it has more influence in our life. So again, it isn't that I don't have a love and belonging need, but my stronger need between the two would be power. My next strongest need is probably fun. And freedom is, and then comes love and belonging. I think I have sort of a everyday kind of love and belonging need there. But when I look back over my lifetime, and I look at important decisions, they were made because of needs other than love and belonging. I've left jobs because I had no freedom and the job wasn't fun. They still paid me, but the money, otherwise known as survival, was not enough to keep me there when I was not able to get a fun and freedom need met within the context of that job. Now, of course, we all have had times where we are engaged in an activity that is not particularly need satisfying, but we can meet our needs outside of that particular activity. So one of the things, if you have not done it already, I encourage you to look back at major life decisions and look at what was the dominant need that was met through that decision? That's how I came to understand that, again, while I have a love and belonging need, it is not my dominant. It is not my dominant need. It isn't dominant. Get my sentence structure going correctly there. So we have problems that come up in our lives. And we have the presenting problem and the real problem. We have the apparent problem and the actual problem. And this is another way of looking at our needs and our needs profile. When people come in and talk to us, they are often coming in and talking to us about a presenting or an appearance or a perceived problem. That often isn't the real problem. For those of you who work in the counseling profession or education, those of you who are in ministry will find that people will come in and will talk to you about all kinds of things. And after you've met with them several times, you will get sort of what we call the real problem. And so they've talked to you about the smaller issues in their life, sort of it's a way of checking us out to see if we are trustworthy, if we're somebody that they believe can help them, like we have answers, what we're saying makes sense to them. And so then again, that is not necessarily love and belonging. People will say, oh, but then they trust you, then you have the love and belonging. Not necessarily. Trust can also be a survival need. So, I'm just putting this out in terms of why it's important to sit down and talk to people without the preconceived idea that the relationship is directly connected to love and belonging. I'm not saying that it isn't, just, open the door to being curious as to whether there's something else going on. So having also talked about the basic needs, the other thing that is critical is our quality world pictures. So where do our quality world pictures come from? That comes from our basic needs. So when we're engaged in an activity, an interaction that is very need satisfying, it becomes a quality world picture. So one of the things that I have been doing is, because November is my birthday month, is I've been celebrating my birthday in varying ways. I stopped eating foods with flour in them 5 years ago. That was not a dietary requirement. I'm not gluten intolerant kind of thing. It was a lifestyle choice. So this year I decided, well, maybe it's been 5 years. That tiramisu at the stores sort of beckons to you. Have a piece. Go ahead. See. So okay, let me tell you, that tiramisu was really good. Where did my tiramisu picture come from? Well, I can tell you. In the 1980s, the William Glasser Institute, under one of its previous names, had a conference in New Orleans. And I attended. Actually, it would have been 92, 93, not in the 80s. Anyway, I went to the conference. And my best friend, Judith Hobbs from Cincinnati, she was there. We roomed together, and there was a little French restaurant across the street from the hotel. And she and I went over there for dinner. And I had read this story, and the characters were talking about tiramisu. I'd never heard of tiramisu. I had no idea what tiramisu was. But it was on the menu. And I thought, this is a sign I'm supposed to experience tiramisu. So I ordered it. And here I am at a conference with the larger Glasser family. I was with my best friend. We were at this wonderful restaurant, and I was having my very first experience with tiramisu. That's why tiramisu is in my quality world. It isn't tiramisu off over here as a food group, separate from everything else. And so that is the power of our quality world. And as we all know, our quality world is based on needs. And when we come for help, when we're looking for help, we need to pay attention to that quality world picture. So I may talk about the needs profile. And I think that's important because you will find with your needs profile, you will have probably shouldn't put it in a concrete way. You may find that you have more quality world pictures connected to some needs than other needs. So knowing what your quality world pictures are, knowing which basic needs they're connected to is key in figuring out what relationships are being challenged. So one of the things we also talk about within the Glasser family is Bill's request that we go forth and we teach choice theory to the world. And so why would we do that? Well, I asked at a faculty meeting, I think it was last month, what does choice theory mean to you? And people had wonderful, positive experiences using choice theory in their lives. The question that I asked last night in an interview I was involved with is, if Vladimir Putin knew choice theory, would he make a different decision about Ukraine? I don't think so. Why? Because knowing choice theory in and of itself is not the answer. Choice theory is an explanation of how and why we behave. Knowing choice theory gives me the power. Remember, power need. Knowing choice theory gives me the power to live in the world in a way that better meets my needs, because I understand myself in a different way at a different level. Knowing reality therapy gives me the problem-solving tool to move forward, to make changes. However, it's all based on the quality world picture that I'm wanting at the time. So I could sit down, well, if I knew Russian, and speak to Vladimir Putin and teach him choice theory and even teach him reality therapy. But unless he changed a quality world picture, he will not make a different choice. So I think that's a bit of a reality check that we need to keep in mind when we go forth, both in terms of teaching choice theory to the world, which I think is something that the world can really use, but also when we're just talking to clients or students, and even with ourselves. If we want things to be different, one of the things that's important is that we look at what quality world picture we're looking at. We used to say controlling for. What quality world picture are you controlling for? Well, in some ways, that's much more accurate language than some of the words that we use these days. But there's something that we want. And that's our quality world picture. And we are determined to get what we want. And we will go through extraordinary means to get what we want. And if it doesn't work, some people go, oh, well, gosh, this isn't working. What can I do different? Some people just double down. We've all met people who just double down. They're not changing their quality world picture. They're not going to do anything different. When I did child protective service work and went and knocked on the door, I often got met by people who were not pleased to see me. Surprise, surprise. You know, my job at that point was to interact with them in a way that they would engage with me, not escalate. Because if they're angry that I'm there, if we cannot find a spot in which to engage, to talk, then they will escalate. They will go from swearing to yelling and swearing to threatening to maybe even shaking a fist or grabbing a weapon to actually doing bodily harm. So, you know, and that's because they haven't changed their quality world picture. And I have not talked to them in such a way that they see that maybe talking to me is going to help them get what they want, which is for me to leave in that situation. And what do I want to do? I want to leave too. So, you know, anyway, that's a little bit aside, but it's really coming from a position that their problems are often a result of a quality world picture that we are hanging on to, that we are not willing to negotiate, let go of, or we're not willing to, I was going to say give up, but that goes back to old concepts also. So that was it. I just think it's really interesting. And one of the things that I have spent time in is looking at people like Vladimir Putin, Adolf Hitler, Mother Teresa, popes. You know, Queen Elizabeth would be another, Queen Elizabeth II would be somebody else, you know, by looking at their public persona, by looking at the choices they're making, can I extrapolate a general idea of what a quality world picture is that they're wanting to manifest by that choice? Because that's it. All behavior is purposeful. Every choice we make is our best effort at the time to manifest a quality world picture. And thank you very much. That was it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Judith. That was very interesting when you started talking about quality world pictures, and you gave a really beautiful detail of how that picture became quality. At first, I thought you was going down a rabbit trail, but it really began to really make sense because you were showing us how tiramisu became quality to you. It was not just it was a group of things that caused it to be quality.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking there and talking about Putin and Hitler and the malevolent as well as Teresa and the Queen and so forth as benevolent, they had power images in their quality world, but they were destructive. And it was quality to them. It just was not for the good of the whole. But that's very interesting who you're talking about that, as we can begin to look at what is the result of our quality pictures, which kind of goes to how that having an addiction can feed into a quality world picture of just, going out for tiramisu with a friend was so inviting that you would keep going and going and going and get larger and larger and larger and more addicted to.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, the way you begin to, so that we can tease it apart and become more real with what our wisdom heart is trying to tell us if we'll only listen. Yeah.
Well, and in the DVD Choice Theory in Motion that Bill was involved in, the content of that, there is drugs and alcohol and guns and all of that in the quality world.
Yes, it is.
So it's anything that's need satisfying. It does not have to be something like tiramisu. It can be something that other people see as very destructive. And as I say, it isn't that somebody like Vladimir Putin does not have a love and belonging need. It's not his dominant need. People whose love and belonging need is dominant usually are kinder to other people. I think of Jeffrey Dahmer, and that's like an outlier in terms of love and belonging need, but the vast majority of people are not the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world. So, I mean, when you watch a Dahmer on Dahmer, if you ever do that, if you haven't already, he does not use the term love and belonging need, but he talks about, I was lonely and I did all, he talks about the progression up to being a cannibal in his efforts to try and keep people with him so he would not be alone. To me, that's love and belonging.
Right. It's just an illusion of it, not the
if you can't do it this way, then you keep, and you get down that path, and you, I mean, that's the part, that's the escalation. It's if yelling at the child protective service worker doesn't make her go away, then maybe, swearing or threatening or, unfortunately at times hitting, her, well, then she comes back with the police. So that wasn't maybe the best choice, but, it's everybody in that moment. I mean, I may not like what some of the choices people are making in the world, but I can say that I know for them at that moment in time, that's the best they can figure out to do for what it is that they want.
Yeah.
And unless they change that quality world picture, they're not going to change their behavior.
And it's also looking at the creative mind that has no filter.
Yeah.
That it can go to a positive or to a negative in the creativity to get what it is they think they want at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, this has been very informative, and I thank you very, very much, Judith. And we'll go ahead and close out, and thank you for watching now and later, and many blessings to all.